Hi, my name is Kelly McKechnie. As you guys know, I'm the owner of Appalachian Trail LLC, and what I'm going to be talking about is my Appalachian Trail through hike. I started in, I got my cheat sheet right here. I started in September. I started on September 30th, 2017 at Mount Katahdin in Maine, and then I hiked 2,190 miles with my dog Riley south to Springer Mountain, Georgia, and we finished on February 17th of 2018. Now, through hiking typically means that you start at one terminus and you finish at the other terminus without getting off the trail. That wasn't necessarily the case for my hike because I did get off for about 30 days. My boyfriend slash fiance at the time, which I'll get into how that transition happened, he was leaving on a deployment with the Marines around that December time frame that I got off the trail, so I did take 30 days off to spend time with him before dropping him off for a deployment, and then the very next day I got back on trail to finish. So I did get off December 21st of 2017. I returned back to the trail January 15th of 2018, and I finished the hike. Typically it takes about 6 months for people to hike this trail. Most people start from Georgia and hike north to Mount Katahdin in Maine, because it is easier in the southern parts of the states, and it gets progressively more difficult as you get up north where there's a rockier terrain. It becomes more bouldering than it does hiking. I decided to do it backwards. So I started in Maine, bouldered my way down through New England, and then became flat hiking the rest of the way. So with these videos, what I'm going to be talking about is kind of my preparation for the hike, how I went about training for it, doing all of the meal prep for it, because I did make a lot of freeze-dried food. I reached out to sponsors and got some sponsors for it as well, because it wasn't just a typical Appalachian Trail hike. Thousands of people attempt the hike every year. Thousands of people quit. Most people, I think it's like 90% of the people begin in Georgia, finish in Maine. Those last 10% do it backwards like I did. Hardly anyone does it in the winter. I wanted to make it the most difficult hike I possibly could, which is why I started in Maine, hiked south of Georgia in the winter. It was wonderful. I saw max about 3 to 5 people a day, and that was during the busy part of the season. And then towards the end, I was lucky if I saw a person a day. It was pretty sparse. That's kind of the hike I wanted as well. So let me just check my handy dandy notes here. So let me talk a little bit about what I'm post-hike. So when I finished the hike, I did start writing a book. There is a book coming. I did have a baby 2 months ago, so I'm going through postpartum, getting back in shape. I am training for Ironman 70.3 Worlds, which are going to be in October of 2022. Hopefully I will be fast enough where I can get my pro card. So I may be going pro depending on my performance there. So I am baby training. I own my own personal training remote business online. I also coach virtually and in person through Fort Bliss, which is where my husband is now located. I live as well. And then we have 2 big dogs. So we have a lot going on. Book is kind of my free time activity. So it will eventually come. It's going to be more of a PDF version that's going to be purchasable on my website, tricamtraining.com. It's going to be like $1, guys. It's going to be really cheap. It's going to be a PDF downloadable version. I want it to be cheap so everyone can buy it, read it, enjoy it. I really want you to enjoy it. I don't want to make it a $20 book where it's going to sit on your shelf forever. It's going to have all the pictures from my hike, which there's about 300 and some change. So it's going to have a lot of pretty pictures because I want you to feel like you're part of the hike. I want you to feel immersed in the story. I don't want you to think of it as my trip, but I want you to put yourself in my boots hiking through the trail. So that is on the horizon. It will eventually come to fruition. So let me talk a little bit about how I got into backpacking during this episode, and then eventually we're going to talk about the hike in its entirety through the events that occurred on the trail. Now, if you know me, I have a lot of tattoos, so this entire sleeve is dedicated to my Appalachian Trail hike, so that is something I will cover eventually. In one of the episodes, I'll go through all the different pieces of it, the pictures I took that are actually a part of my body now, and all the different little intricacies that are in it that have a story behind them. But the way I got into backpacking, like most women, it was with a guy. It was an ex-boyfriend of mine. We did day hikes together, I believe. And then we had a very bad breakup. And I was like, I really want to get into backpacking. This is something that I really like doing. I like the independence of it. It was great to just get out, and how quiet it was. I was with my dog. It was something that brought me peace. And I lived in Ohio at the time, so a winter was approaching at that time that I was really getting into backpacking. And my birthday, excuse me, it's mid-February. So I don't remember how old I was at the time, mid to younger 20s, maybe like 23, 24. I was like, for my birthday, I'm going to go do my very first backpacking experience, because I'd never camped and backpacked at the same time. So I was like, I'm going to go do my very first backpacking experience by myself with my dog for my birthday. So I took time off of work, which at the time, we'll talk about work in a minute, little scatterbrained with this mom deal going on. So I took time off of work, about 3 days, and went for my very first backpacking experience in Hocking Hills, which is southern Ohio. And it was cold. We had just gotten ice and snow the night before. I do remember there was ice and snow on the ground. So I was not prepared, guys. I didn't have any winter gear. I think my sleeping bag was like 30 degrees. Thankfully, I had like an 80-pound dog with me. Riley's a pretty big dog. So it was a rude awakening. I was very sore, wasn't used to having a heavy pack on my back. And I was sore from it, but it was very enlightening and enjoyable at the same time, because I was doing something by myself after a very bad breakup, and I just really wanted to grow that independence and grow that courage that I still have within me. So we set up camp, and that night there is a young man that comes in to camp, and he asks if he can camp like around us in the area, because I had a fire going. I was like, yeah, sure, like set up camp is fine. And we got to talking, and he had just gotten off the Appalachian Trail. He didn't finish his through hike. He did quit. But he was telling me about the trail, and having grown up in North Carolina, we have my family, like my aunts, uncles, grandparents, we co-own property in the North Carolina mountains close to the Appalachian Trail. So I was familiar with the trail. I just wasn't aware of its entirety. So he was kind of telling me a little bit about his experience, his adventure, and I just caught the bug instantly. I just was ravenous to learn more about his trip, his experience, and was already starting to plan what I wanted to do for my Appalachian Trail hike, being on my very first 2-night backpacking experience in Hocking Hills, Ohio. So as you can imagine, I get pretty heavy-brained. Like, I get very excited over things very quickly, and just very spontaneous in that aspect, I believe. My husband would very much agree with that. So he keeps telling me about his experience, his hike, and I was just enthralled. I couldn't get enough. I went home after that backpacking experience and was just Googling Appalachian Trail, how people do it, what all it entails, how to prepare, just everything about it. I just couldn't get enough, and it just kind of stuck in my mind. So after that backpacking experience, I did buy better gear. I started to grow in that aspect of my backpacking career, and then from there, I did get a new job. So at the time, I was working for L Brands as a data analyst in their candle lab. So if you've ever bought Bath and Body Works, White Barn, Victoria's Secret, any of their candles, within that 2015 timeframe, I believe, I very likely helped did the data analysis on those candles. I was working with their candle company, producing the candles for the best flame. So that's kind of what I was doing at the time. It was an in-between job because I had just left the Ohio EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, as a fisheries intern doing watershed surveying. And then I had just gotten my very first big girl job up in Michigan working for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So from the time I finished my backpacking career, I just got started. My backpacking trip to Hocking Hills, I got my very first job working for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife up in Michigan. So I got to practice my camping experience because I was living out of my truck at the time. The job itself entailed 2 weeks of work on and then 1 week of work off, I believe. I can't remember, it was a while ago. Or like a week and half a week or something. Regardless, I wasn't going to purchase a place to live or rent a place if I'm going to be gone a third of the time. So I just packed my truck up, brought my dog. I lived out of my truck and I camped on the week that we had off. And it was wonderful because I got to experience pretty much all of Michigan with the work we were doing. We were traveling, living out of hotels. And then for the week off, I would go and kayak Pictured Rocks or hike through Pictured Rocks, hike through the North Country Trail that ran through that area. Got a lot of practice in for my hike, and I got to do more research to really hone in exactly how I wanted to progress through a 2,000-mile hike in the winter. So I did get a lot of practice there, worked through some gear issues that eventually helped me on my trail. But yeah, I think my career leading up to my backpacking the Appalachian Trail was a huge bonus. It really did help me get through that experience because it's not something to just kind of leave your desk job and hike the trail. You can do that. People do that, but you do want to have more experience, especially if you want to do it in a short time frame, which is kind of why I'm talking about my job, because with that career or job with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, it was seasonal. So it was, I believe it was April through October. So I knew I had between October and March essentially to get my hike completed before I had to go back to work. So I did know that that was a big factor in me choosing to do a winter hike because I did want to keep that job. It was a great job, but I also wanted my hike at the same time. I wanted my cake and I wanted to, which I ended up having. So it is possible, guys. Let me look at this real quick. So, okay, yeah. So at that point, I really just kind of started planning my hike. I did settle on a winter hike because it did fit within my job. And then from that point, I was the crazy person that would go home. I lived in Lexington, North Carolina at the time, so where my home base was, because again, guys, I didn't have a house. I was living on my truck. So I went back to Lexington, North Carolina, which we don't get a lot of snow. I think we get like a dusting in the winter. And I would just be doing circles in my parents' pasture because we had about a 25-acre property. And I would just be hiking circles for hours a day with my dog, with my backpack on, just getting my legs used to walking all day long. So it was really boring, but I mean, I really do think it helped me with my hike because, again, most people take 6 months to hike from Georgia to Maine. I did it in 3 months going Maine to Georgia, which it typically takes longer. So it's by no means a competition. I am just trying to get the point across that it is not an easy feat to hike the Appalachian Trail. It is even harder to hike it going Maine to Georgia in the winter. That's just what I'm trying to get across. So I knew that going into it, I did want to prepare myself as best as possible. So I did train my body. Leading up to it, I was lifting and working out and constantly keeping myself in check. I was also eating a lot to get fat and put on a lot of fat before I started my hike because I lost about 50 pounds on my hike. That's another part of the story we will get to. But for now, we're probably going to leave it right here where just kind of the introduction to the hike, kind of the background as to how I got into it. And then next time we're going to be talking about the start. So we'll get into the start. Talking more about the preparation. So again, freeze drying my meals, planning my route, planning drop-off locations, because as you know, you're hiking, you're not walking down Main Street going to Walmart. You're lucky if there's a post office every 100 miles that you can pick up a drop box location or stop in at a Dollar General to go get a soda or some bag of chips. So we'll talk about the food I ate, everything. We're going to go over everything. And then there are some pretty incredible stories that I have to share with you guys that I do want to make permanent, not just through my book, but also through these video shares, whatever they are. So you guys can listen in, hear how incredible some of the people are on the trail, just these people in the world that we get to live with, and we don't even realize that they're our friends. These wonderful people that do incredible things for people that they don't know. And I hope that inspires you to be great people as well, because it definitely left a mark on me, obviously. So we'll get into that on the next video shares, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Stay tuned for more Appalachian Trail stories.